My name is James Fletcher. I'm an advisor at Evans & Partners. Some of you may recognise me. I've been here a couple of times before. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you to FB Rice for hosting us once again. We have two companies joining us today. BirdDog is the first one, a technology manufacturer in the AV and broadcast space, the global reach and first to market momentum. I'd like to introduce the founder, Dan Mile.
Got it in one.
Thank you very much. Dan founded the company in 2016. Dan's been in the space for quite a long time. He also founded Blonde Robot, was a success previously. There will be questions, Q&A after the presentation. So if you'd like to welcome Dan to the stage, please.
Thank you very much, James. And also thank you very much to FB Rice for the room and Monsoon for putting on the event, and everyone for coming. So as was just said, my name's Dan Mile. I'm the founder and CEO of BirdDog Technology. BirdDog's been around for a little while. We do effectively video production equipment for the next generation of video producers. So you've seen video cameras around before. I'm sure you've seen plenty of productions around the place. What's different with us is we've taken that and connected it to the networks and internet that's already in structures and in buildings around the place. And that's a profound difference in the way that video can be produced. Where previously, I'm sure you've seen those big production trucks that are out the front of big sporting events and things. We don't need that separate infrastructure that's expensive, that takes a lot of time to set up. You need someone with a lab coat to run. We can run that off regular networks. To prove that point, tonight we've actually bought some of our cameras and we're doing the live stream using our cameras as well. And you can see they're pretty much non-existent. We turned up in a little flight case, just a carry-on case with 3 cameras and everything ready to go. So it's much easier to use. So as a company, we've been running now for about 7 years. And over that time, obviously we've listed. We're listed on the ASX. We've got some really interesting sort of stories to tell and some really interesting growth stories that are coming out as we've been producing some of these products. So I guess the first thing that was mentioned earlier is we are a global company. We're founded here in Melbourne. I was born and bred here, but actually more than 95% of our business is done outside of Australia. And that's been the case the whole time. We're very much in high appeal in markets like the US, through into Europe, but actually in every corner of the world, through the Middle East, through Latin America, through any country, effectively our products are available and on sale. We're a global leader, and I'll read this out, but then I'll explain what I mean by this. We're a global leader in broadcast quality software-enabled video technology. What that actually means is, as I sort of explained before, we make things a lot easier to work with live production on computer networks. That might seem a little odd because we can watch Netflix at home and we've been able to do that for years, and we can watch videos on Facebook. But live video is the important thing here. If you imagine a stadium or an event like this where you might have a big screen behind someone, having broadcast quality, high quality pictures, being able to go over a regular computer network was kind of the last thing computer networks couldn't do. And we've been able to build our chips and our technology into products like these cameras that we make to enable that to happen. So it has a dramatic effect in terms of the cost of installation, but also the creativity you can have, the amount of cameras you can have in rooms. They're all robotic and easy to control. You don't need to have all these cameramen all over the place taking up space, but also limiting the capabilities. We're poised for growth, and for that, we've been listed for a little while, and look, we've had a bit of a challenging 12 months. I'll go through a bit later on in terms of our supply chains and what's changed there, but the really exciting thing is where we are in the middle of 2024 and beyond. We've actually been able to refresh our entire product line as version 2 of all of our products. That's building up on all the success and all the knowledge that we learned with our first products we brought to market and optimizing that. Making sure they're higher quality and more appealing to our customers, but also making sure that they're higher margins for the company and able to be built in a much more practical way. And that's been really successful. We're about halfway through the release of this next generation of products. And effectively every month from here until the end of the year, we have additional products coming online. The great news is with the half of those products released, we're now getting back into profitability and also growth territory. So as you can imagine, we're pretty excited about the next generation, the more products coming out to market. So again, I've talked about cameras. We actually make a whole ecosystem, and that's something that's really important for us. If we were to talk about cameras, you'd look at that and go, well, clearly a risk is Sony, Canon, these big companies out there that make cameras. The problem with that is, they're big and they could easily squash us if we just made cameras. What we make is an entire solution that's completely different to what they do, and it's appealing to a much broader market than just video production. So whilst we have high quality cameras that use the best sensors, that have the best robotics to make everything look as smooth and great as possible, we also embed our IP into these, which makes it a whole lot more flexible on computer networks. We have broadcast quality at our heart. If you look at a lot of our cameras, and really cameras in general, they look suspiciously like CCTV cameras. In a lot of cases, that is what they are. But our cameras are built as a broadcast video camera at the beginning, so quality is the most important thing. I've mentioned about the compatibility or the solutions that we make. One of the big things for us is, call it a bit of paranoia, but the very first product we made was a little black box that did some amazing things. The paranoia is a Chinese company or someone else could come and make that black box for $10 cheaper. How do we make it more appealing and more robust as far as a go-to-market? And that's really where our solutions come in. We join everything together and make it far more easy for anyone to use, whether that's someone doing something for YouTube, for live streaming on Zoom, or for a video production, or for broadcast, or for AV. We make everything work together and communicate a lot easier. We've got great partnerships with companies like Zoom. Our cameras are all certified for there. And in fact, with Zoom, we ended up working with the NBA, and every live broadcast that the NBA uses our cameras for some of their angles because they couldn't use traditional broadcast cameras. AI is obviously a buzzword. Everyone uses that in video technology these days, but also in broader, just general community. With AI, we've built them into our new generation of cameras as well. And that allows these cameras effectively to steer themselves. They can follow a person as they're walking around the stage if they're a wanderer, or we can reframe everything automatically, making things easier for someone that's producing a video. Talking about diverse markets and global, I mentioned before that our products are available anywhere in the world. The markets that we serve are really, I think, probably the more interesting part of that. Back in my kind of background, and the core of the business is really about content creation and live video. So that's your broadcasters, ESPN, like I mentioned. It's also people doing live streaming for corporate events and whatever that might be, where they're doing, I guess, traditional video production that they want to share with somebody. But we've got a much greater appeal than that. Some of the emerging markets we're getting into is AV, corporate AV. So you see if you look behind here, there's a whole bunch of boxes and cables and converters and things that are running behind these screens. We simplify that too. And we make that easy for installers to put them in. It makes it much more predictable for people to be able to deploy solutions and use something using a BirdDog side of things. Some of the more alternative markets that we're really getting into in quite a meaningful way are medical. We've got a couple of solutions there. One that's, I think, pretty exciting is customized vaccines. We work with some of the largest manufacturers out there for vaccines, and we've installed a number of cameras, many hundreds of them, in these vaccine development plants, where we can monitor with AI to make sure that the processes are happening in the right order. With the quality of our cameras and the speed, we can get that to be far more accurate than using other solutions. We've also got a really interesting medical solution that we have as well, which is more about professionals in the medical space being able to collaborate. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to move up a little bit faster. In terms of our strategy, I mentioned that we first started off with making boxes and cameras. Software and communication and things working together was really to buttress that. That's our second stage of really priming us for growth, to make sure someone couldn't come out and build a solution that was similar to ours. So we've done that. The next step is really global reach. All of our products, all of our cameras and our converters and our solutions can have people involved in that professional production anywhere in the world. And again, this is something that's really groundbreaking in the way that our solutions come together. Bring all that together, and effectively what we have now is our recipe for growth in both that core market for live production and content, but also in these emerging markets that we're working in. So speaking of, I mentioned earlier, the medical solution, we actually have a branded solution called Remedy. This uses all of the work that we've done over the last 4 or 5 years in our communication and everything working together, and wraps that up in a solution that a neurosurgeon can use, that a medical device manufacturer can deploy, and that a hospital can put into their operating theatres. It allows people to communicate far more easily and be able to interact in real time. So someone, let's say a specialist, can not only look at what's happening in that hospital room, they can also have a look at the patient monitoring system. They can draw over the top and collaborate. It's a bit like Zoom, but it's on steroids and made with a interface that is built for the medical space. So it's using all of our technology and really just wrapping that up for a specific market. We've been building this particular solution over the last 12 months. That's now starting to be deployed in all of those markets I was talking about. We have hospitals that are actually installing this. We've got medical device manufacturers that are using this for training people on new devices. And we've also got remote solutions that are allowing training to happen. Very similar in a solution, but a completely different output is working with Hollywood-style post-production systems. I've mentioned a lot about live television, but post-production is Hollywood blockbusters, it's episodic television and things where they're edited. And right now, you need to have an editor, a producer, a director, anyone that's involved in that production effectively in the same room. With our solution, with our cloud-based solution, we can have those people anywhere in the world, but they're able to see what they need to see, they're able to interact and work with each other as if they're right next to each other. And we're partnering up with a couple of the largest organisations in this space. One of them is Adobe, which I'm sure most people have heard of, with their Premiere system, and the other one is Avid, which is actually the more premium solution that's used by much of the larger Hollywood production houses. Getting into more of the business side of things, as I mentioned earlier, we've had a bit of a challenging 12 months, and look, no doubt the share price reflects that. We've had supply chain issues. One of our key suppliers is no longer supplying our products, and with that, effectively put a fire under us to make these next generation products that we've been bringing to market. And that's something we've been really successful with over the last 12 months. They're now coming into market, getting back into profitability, and moving into that growth phase. In terms of our products, we've been able to optimize that in terms of the profitability, how they come out, even how long they take to produce. It's really turning into a great story from that point of view. In terms of our capitalisation, we listed a little over 2 years ago. We remain really well capitalised. Our capital management program is actually very robust. You can see here that we've maintained a significant amount of cash. That's to be able to work with R&D and potential other options where acquisitions may be interesting as well. But it's also allowed us to be really strong in terms of how we actually develop these next generation products. Diversified manufacturing, I've mentioned that we build out these new products. The big thing with this is we had supply concentration previously. We've now addressed that completely. So we have multiple suppliers that have come on stream that allows us to make sure that what we're bringing to market, we can continue to deliver. It's pretty exciting really that we have a whole new product range that effectively is brand new, that has a life cycle that's many years. So as much as we've been around for a number of years, we've got a great deal ahead of us with the existing products that we've built. So I guess in summary, and I'm hoping my time's right and we can open up for some questions, we do have some great solutions. The uniqueness about what we have is the quality of the products that we produce in terms of the image quality and the way they work on regular computer networks. It's the solution-based architecture that we have. It's really attractive for larger organisations where they want to deploy many, many systems. To be able to manage those all with the same kind of control is actually something that's quite unique to us. In terms of our innovation, this next generation of products has proven that that's the case. We continue to innovate. In fact, for me, we've got a product roadmap that's around 5 years from now. We've still got plenty of ideas that are coming out in terms of what is next, what will grow the business and how we get to additional markets. I've mentioned about our licensing and our marketing that we have with other organisations that we partner with, so companies like Zoom, like NBA, NEC, Adobe, Avid, there's many of them that we work with to enhance the awareness of our product range. And moving into those solutions like the medical space and post-production allows us recurring revenue as well. So rather than just selling a solution, we're actually then selling an ongoing license to that as well. I've mentioned about our strong balance sheet, and as far as I'm concerned, where we are now is very exciting for our growth positioning. We have our new products on market. They've been accepted by the market in general. It's returning us to profitability very quickly, and we've still got a long way to go in terms of those next generation products coming out before the end of the year. Just a brief last slide is just the management team. We've got a fairly lean and mean board structure, and that's deliberate. We've optimised that over the last little while as well. We've got John Dixon as our chair and Alan Sparks as a non-executive director, and myself. Between us, we've got a lot of experience in terms of scaling up business, but also in the tech business in terms of going out global with technology products. The ELT is myself, plus Barry, our Chief Financial Officer. Josh Bernstein's been with us now for a little while. He's based out in Silicon Valley, and he comes from the largest tech companies out there. He runs our engineering team and operations, so we've got, over the last 12 months, a lot of that injected into how we're developing products. And Jamie Ambrose looks after our go-to-market and revenue base as well. So as I mentioned, the excitement in terms of new products and getting them out to market and making sure they're accepted has been really well achieved over the last little while. So that's the end of my presentation. I think I'm okay with timing. Is there time for questions now, Rudy? Or okay, I'll open it up for any questions.
So are you cash positive at the moment?
We're in a blackout at the moment, so I'll just say, we're just about to release our financials, so I won't get into too much of that. What I will say is the next generation products have come out through this quarter. If we look at the last month in the quarter, then it's absolutely delivering cash back to the business.
Yeah, so your market cap versus the cash you've got on hand is actually valuing your business at a minus.
At a negative, that's right, yes.
Which doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, I tend to agree.
So good value buying.
Is there any particular reason for that?
Look, I think to speculate on the market, this is the first time I've run a public company. The reality is we've got a relatively small book of shareholders. There's not a lot of trade that goes on. So effectively, our market cap changes over a very small amount of trades. So we have someone that, for whatever reason, wants to move on their shares. There isn't a pool of demand. So for us, really, it's about making sure the awareness of the company is there to create a bit more just overall trade. And I think that would actually help a significant amount. On top of that, we obviously need to prove the profitability of the business, and there has been some challenges over the last 12 months, like I mentioned. But I'm very confident over time we can build that back.
Is there any plans of improving the liquidity of the stock?
So I think there's a number of things we have tried. We did a on-market buyback a little while ago. So that in some ways helped a bit. But I think really the biggest thing for us is awareness, doing some more road shows, actually more events like this to get in front of people. I'm very aware that I've been focusing on the business, but we actually need to let people know what the business is as well.
I'm curious about the name BirdDog.
Well, you might have heard the previous company was called Blonde Robot, so funny names are kind of one of those things, but partly it's to do with being memorable. The other part is, it's a funny way to call a company. I'm not a hunter, but if you are a hunter, you've got a bird dog, and they're your faithful assistant. They help you in getting what you're wanting to get done in terms of hunting. We do that for video production. We're your bird dog for video production.
What's the price range of your products? Like, are you able to target a personal consumer market, or is it really corporates and businesses?
Yeah, so the question was, what's the price range of our products? The entry point right now probably puts us a little bit over, effectively, someone that's wanting to work at home just as a consumer, buy it at JB Hi-Fi. It starts, I'll talk in US dollars because that's really our market. It starts at about $1,000 US for our lowest end camera. It goes up to around about $10,000. So it's not ridiculously expensive, but it's also probably more into a hobby rather than a let's give it a go. But we're very aware that there's a great market that sort of sits below where we are as well. So.
Yeah, no, because I'm thinking of a company like Blackmagic, which has really captured the consumer market globally, a major success. I was just wondering whether you're in that sort of space.
We're in a very similar space, probably just a touch above in terms of price point. But again, with these next generation products, we're starting to be able to push that down while still maintaining margins on there as well. So we're very much looking at what we can do to expand out into the higher priced and higher valued market, but also move down into the larger volume market as well.
Can you walk us through how you acquire customers?
Yes. So how we acquire customers, we've got there's two strategies with this. Our go-to-market, I mentioned that we sell products all over the world. We don't have a huge staff presence. We have an office in the US, we've got an office in Europe as well. So yeah, we have distributors. So we sell through our distribution channel and we advertise through them. So that'll be a retail store that we'll work with to send out information to their end users. But we also at the same time target those customers directly as well. So we do trade shows, we do a lot of advertising, we do a bunch of things that build that awareness within the industries that we're in. So we kind of access it from both sides. We have a push through the channel where we're educating and compelling our channel to talk about our products, but we're also accessing the customers directly by talking with them through social media, through various advertising, webinars and that kind of thing.
So what are some of the typical customer acquisition costs?
In terms of on the front end, from acquiring a customer directly, relatively low. I mean, our industry and especially the customers we're targeting are fairly savvy. So a lot of that's done through social media. Our most expensive cost in terms of accessing customers is the trade shows that we attend. There's a couple of industry trade shows, 2 within the broadcast space and 2 within the corporate and AV space. And those are kind of our big spends in terms of accessing customers. Beyond that, really, it's mostly social and campaigns that go through our channel, which is relatively low cost.
So being a tech company, do you measure yourself on CACs and things like this?
So we have some of that. Frankly, there's more work that can be done within that space. We have done a lot of work recently on how we actually build out those marketing campaigns and actually manage those. We've had an interesting ride really since the beginning. We started out with a new technology that really pushed itself. We had new adopters that wanted to learn about these products. Then we went headlong into COVID, where people just wanted anything they could get. And so reinventing beyond that is about making sure that people are aware of our products and things. And so from that point of view, we're doing more and more of that monitoring, and over time that does shape the way we do our programming.
So as a follow-on, can you tell us how big the market is?
Yeah, so we sit within our direct market. We're actually a fairly strong player within that. So within the live production, we sit at somewhere around about the 10% of the market for that particular niche. But that's only a small subsection of the overall camera market that we access in terms of corporate AV and things. So it's a multi-billion-dollar market that we have access to globally, significantly larger than that. In terms of what we have now, we have a good foothold. We're a well-known brand, but there's still plenty of room to acquire market share within just that core market, but then also in the adjacent markets with corporate AV, medical, and the other areas.
Well, maybe one more question.
Do you do much in the security space, given that you've got better resolution than most of the other cameras on?
Almost, we do, yes is the answer, but not deliberately. So our solutions do get put into security environments. The challenge we've got is, frankly, right now, security cameras are fairly well dominated by low-cost Chinese manufacturers, and there's a price expectation for that. That's changing, especially with government mandates around spyware and all that kind of thing. So we have a great opportunity as we move forward. Right now, we've got a lot of deployments in casinos, for example. It is security, but it's an interesting take on that is, again, talking in the medical space, we've got cameras that are all over these vaccine production plants where they anonymise people, but they count the amount of people that come in and out of buildings to make sure if there's an emergency that everyone's out of the building. So we do have security applications. In terms of mainstream selling security cameras you might see in a shopping mall, probably not quite yet. Yep.
Lovely. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan. Next up, we have Dr. Richard Orman, CEO and Executive Director of BirdDog. I've been interested in biotech for about a decade now. I have a long history in mispronouncing various drugs and medical conditions. I won't continue that tonight, but Richard has over 30 years of scientific research, leadership and innovation with a clear focus on commercialisation in this space. So we'd like to welcome Dr. Richard Orman, please.
Thank you. So CLEO Diagnostics was established specifically to commercialise an ovarian cancer diagnostic that was developed at the Hudson Institute for Medical Research over the past 15 years or so by our chief scientist, Dr. Andrew Stevens. We listed on the ASX about 11 months ago, mid-August last year. Our share price has held up very well since then, and it's starting to show signs of life as we deliver on our milestones going forward. I just want to tell you something about those milestones tonight. And we are bringing to market a simple blood test for ovarian cancer. And it's very easy in many ways to launch a biotech business. it's not very easy to launch a successful biotech business. And before listing, we probably spent 12 months getting our strategic plans in order, setting our stall out, if I can put it that way, to make sure that we do deliver a successful business. As I say, the technology is very good, and it's a very open space that we're operating in. Ovarian cancer, there's very little in the way of competing products that are any good. And there's a significant worldwide addressable market because of that. The technology is supported by very strong clinical evidence. We have delivered 3 clinical validation studies just in the past 9 months. And I'll come back to that later on, because that is extremely important to us as a business, that we deliver that supporting scientific evidence. We have a strong intellectual property position, which is actually managed by FB Rice. We have patent coverage in the US and Australia for our core biomarker technology, pending elsewhere in the world, which we expect to be granted in the near future. We've also got further filings around the commercial kit design, which we'll be launching commercially towards the end of next year. And we've got an interesting staged execution strategy, which is of interest to people like yourselves, because I'm sure you will have seen biotechs launch and then take years and years and don't deliver a commercial product. We've got a very aggressive timeline to deliver an FDA-approved product, and we've also assembled a very skillful team within the company. Our chief scientist, as I've mentioned, has been working on this project for the past 15 years with his academic team. He's now a full-time CLEO employee. I'll just touch upon our board of directors, because we also have Professor Tom Joblin, who's probably the most preeminent gynecologic oncology surgeon in Australia. He's important to us because when we do launch, all of his colleagues will be potential early adopters of the tech. We also have Lucinda Nolan, who was previously the CEO of the Ovarian Cancer Research Foundation in Australia. A very different black book that she has, and she is responsible for getting me in the door to government organisations for both long-term reimbursement issues, but also to have those discussions about getting into the medical guidelines as we move forward. I'm not going to dwell on the problem that we've got on ovarian cancer, but suffice to say it is a very nasty disease. In the scheme of things, it's actually quite a rare disease. Only 300,000 women worldwide will get cancer. Perhaps 2,000 here in Australia, maybe 20,000 in the USA. But if we look at this number compared to the 300,000, 200,000 of them will die of their disease, usually within 12 to 18 months. And the reason for that is because there isn't an adequate diagnostic in place today. And that's where CLEO is looking to make a difference. Ovarian cancer, like pretty much all other solid tumours, is very treatable and curable if you catch it early in stage 1. Now, unfortunately, with ovarian cancer, most of those cancers are detected at stage 3 or 4. And the unfortunate reality is that survival time is in the order of 12 to 18 months maximum. And again, we see our product as being able to make a difference in this field. And as I mentioned, we've got this interesting staged execution strategy. Now, our first product to market will be a pre-surgical triage test. And that's designed to show the difference between benign ovarian disease and malignant ovarian cancer. And the reason we've taken this approach of bringing that test to market is twofold. One is that there is a couple of existing products already on market, which means that our route to FDA approval is extremely straightforward. And indeed, our clinical trials to support that application will be announced quite imminently. And the other reason, of course, is that medically it's very important. Now, at the moment, there's no way of diagnosing ovarian cancers without removing your ovaries. There's no such thing as a biopsy for ovarian cancer. The reason being is that once you stick a needle through the abdomen, you're in great danger of spreading tumour cells all over the place and inducing multiple more tumours. So diagnosis is done after your ovaries have been removed. Now, 90% of those surgeries will be found to be benign. Now, you can't just put those ovaries back again if they haven't got ovarian cancer. So this is a really significant problem. The second product that will be coming out is a recurrence test designed to see if disease is coming back after your initial surgery. Now, again, the unfortunate reality is that most women, because they're detected late, they'll have their ovarian tumour removed, but the vast majority of them will recur within 18 months. So if we can detect that recurrence earlier, there is potential to offer them more options. The likelihood is we'll not be able to extend their lifetime significantly, but we do provide these other options which may make their quality of life a lot better. In terms of a regulatory approach, very similar to the one that we're using for the triage test. There is a biomarker called CA125 which has FDA approval for this usage. Unfortunately, it doesn't work very well. The sensitivity specificity for CA125 is around 50%, so it's not much better than tossing a coin. And of course, the long-term goal, our holy grail, if I can call it that, is to bring to market a screening test for the general population. And I'll come back to this shortly because our early prototype data, where we've been building the triage test, is extremely promising for early-stage cancer detection. And speaking to doctors in the US just in the past month, it is amongst the best that they have seen. So internally as a company, we are extremely excited about this prospect. The difference between all of these and why they're brought to market in this phased approach is really because the clinical trial requirements for each of these tests becomes increasingly complex as we move along from triage to recurrence to screening. The triage test, we have a trial just about to kick off in the USA of 500 patients. A mirror image of that trial here in Australia for a further 500. But to bring a screening test to market, for example, probably in excess of 20,000 patients required. So we are looking very hard at how we manage that process and how we can perhaps bring forward that timeline. And I'll come back to that later. Let me tell you a little bit about test performance and why we're feeling so good about the product at the moment. The FDA application for the triage test requires something called a substantial equivalence determination. Now, what they're looking for is that our product is substantially equivalent to a test that's already on market. And over the past 9 months, we've delivered 3 clinical validation studies which show that our test is indeed better than any of the other available tools that doctors have at the moment for that triage testing. The items you see on the graph here, Roma is a risk of malignancy algorithm sold by Fuji-Rabio. Over1 is sold by a company called Aspira. And RMI is the technology which is used most often here in Australia, the risk of malignancy index. And we can see from this data that we've generated over the past 9 months that CLEO's technology is outperforming all of those other tests. So that makes our job of going through the FDA application incredibly straightforward. I won't say it's easy because we've got a lot of work to do over the next 12 months, making sure that we deliver that application on time. And this is a little bit of a complicated figure to look at, but the reason I've put it in here is to perhaps get us thinking ahead a little bit to the bigger goal about a screening test. When we were analysing the prototype triage test, we had a number of early stage cancers in there that we were analysing. And we were able to pick up 90% of those stage 1 cancers with the technology as it stands today. Only 30% of those early stage cancers were detected by ultrasound and CA125, which is the normal clinical pathway that would happen if you went to your doctors. The reason this is so exciting to us is because all of the evidence indicates that if we can achieve 75% sensitivity at 99% specificity, we have sufficient performance to introduce a screening test to the general population. We can see from this top number here, even with the prototype, we're only 1% off in terms of specificity at the moment. And that's without any optimization of the algorithm, without any optimization of our biomarker assay. So even at this very early stage of prototype development, there's a lot of excitement internally and amongst the doctors that we've spoken to about the potential usefulness of this product. How's it going to work? Well, one of the things that we've been very careful of is building a test that will fit seamlessly into any pathology lab. And we also want to make it as painless as possible for the medical community. It can be a simple tick box on a pathology slab. We get sent off one of your blood tests, ovarian cancer test, tick the box, be sent off to a pathology lab, be analysed with the biomarker panel, go through our proprietary algorithm, and a report sent back to the doctor. We are not going to rely on having any equipment or platforms which are not normally present in pathology laboratories, because that would induce delay in bringing the product to market. And as I said earlier on, we've got this very strong strategic plan about how we're going to commercialize the technology. And quite often, a biotech company in the diagnostic space will have one or two of these plans in place. Very few have them all in place at day one, which is where CLEO has a lot of strength in bringing these products to market. So in terms of regulatory pathway, as I've mentioned, we've got a very straightforward route to achieve FDA approval. As soon as we have that in place, we'll be doing something called a conformity assessment here in Australia and in Europe for TGA approval and for CE marking. That turnaround time, once we've got FDA approval, is short. It's in the order of 60 to 90 days, so it's not a substantial time delay between the two jurisdictions. Our clinical trials that we have set up, we have outsourced management of that to Lindus Health in the USA, again to make sure that we deliver on the timelines. Those first patient samples will be announced to the market very soon, and that trial will be running for 10 months. In terms of operations and manufacturing, we have done due diligence on 4 potential manufacturing partners, and that will again be announced to the market shortly. We have a strong IP position. In terms of supply chain, we've built hybridomas to all of our antibodies, so we have control of the reagents going forward. And we've got a very strong commercial support strategy, which includes the publication base. We've partnered with a company called HC Focus in the USA to help us with reimbursement. In terms of the market size, the initial triage tests are about 1 million patients per annum in the USA. And I'll just end talking about that 1 million patients because the cost of goods for our test, we're looking at about $25. And a similar test is currently reimbursed to the tune of about $925 US. So there's a very healthy margin on that initial product. And I'll just leave the summary up there about how we're managing the company. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Any questions? Yes, please.
So, ovarian cancer tends to be a postmenopausal disease, and most cancer screening programs, like breast cancer for example, tend to start around middle age, 45, 50. Now, because this is new technology, I would imagine a screening program would commence around the same age. Now, the reality is that people younger than that age do get ovarian cancer and breast cancer for that matter. So that earlier age would probably be driven by private payers in the first instance. So you could pay to get the test at an earlier age. But I think the evidence base would need to be bigger to offer it routinely to younger people. So I'm guessing 45 to 50 initially.
And it would be every 5 years, every 10 years?
It's difficult to say. I think, given my scientific background, I think I would piggyback on the data for colorectal screening, which would be about every 2 years. The reason being is that cancers grow fairly slowly, but there's a very short gap between them being small and curable and being incurable. So I think a 2-year window would be most likely.
So your smart sort of, in essence, lie with the algorithm?
The smarts is in two things. One is in the biomarkers that Andrew Stevens discovered. And they were discovered by chance. He was very interested in why the immune system is turned off in ovarian cancer, because it is, you don't get an immune response. And he discovered this marker, which was generated by the ovarian tumour extremely early on in its lifetime. And it actually got chemically modified. And that chemical modification seems to turn off the recruitment of immune cells to the tumour. And we are measuring both forms of that biomarker in the test. And it's so important that that happens early on in the lifetime, because that opens the door for us to build that early stage screening test.
So it's a targeting of this biomarker, the CLEO.
It is. We've got a panel in there. We've got 5 biomarkers in there. We've got 3 biomarkers which have previously been used for ovarian cancer, but these 2 novel biomarkers, called CXCL10, seem to be the ones which are giving us the performance benefit for early stage detection.
And the other tests target the other biomarker, the
Yeah.
CA1.
So we've got CA125, we have one called HE4, and we've got another immune-related biomarker called IL-6, which is also released by the tumour very early on in its lifetime. And I haven't spoken about it tonight, but Andrew and his team have discovered that these novel biomarkers are released in pre-malignant lesions, something called a P53 lesion, which is the precursor to ovarian cancer malignancy. And what that means is that if you're expressing these markers, the likelihood is that you will go on to develop ovarian cancer within, a fairly short time frame. So that's why it's so useful as a screening technology.
Can I add a question? Do you have any commercial partnerships prior to FDA approval? Anything in the works there, please?
So those commercial partnerships, I just touched upon it very briefly, but we will be outsourcing manufacturing to an international manufacturing partner. Unfortunately, there is nobody with the appropriate skill set, expertise and facilities here in Australia. And my preference is to use a US supplier for a number of reasons, because it makes life with the FDA a little bit easier, but also makes the supply chain a bit easier to manage.
What will your target customer base look like?
The early stages will be the medical community, which is why we've got this pre-commercial activities that we're embarking on at the moment, with HC Focus helping us in the USA. They've already made some introductions to KOLs for us, key opinion leaders. Those KOLs are actually surgeons by and large in the first instance. And the reason they are so important to us in the early days of commercial launch is because we will be building a reimbursement case for the US insurance companies over the next 12 months. And those KOLs will start using the test as early adopters. But over above that, they will be getting on the phone to the US insurance companies and say, look, I'm using this test on my patient, you need to pay for it. And as that story builds and colleague doctors see how well the test is performing, then that's how we intend growing the initial customer base. Now, in terms of a screening test, the route to market is going to be a little bit different. And those discussions will be with the medical guideline bodies, because if the medical guideline bodies recommend that a CLEO test is used on patients, whether it be patients who have symptoms or not, it becomes very difficult for a doctor to not prescribe the test to them. Unfortunately, medical treatment is a very litigious business in the USA. So if you deviate from the medical guidelines, it's bad news for the doctor.
Maybe one.
Can you just reiterate your funding position in Burn at the moment?
So we costed the project very well before listing. We raised $12 million, which would be enough to take us through to that FDA application. We still have $9 million in the bank today as we speak. There will be an increased burn rate over the next 3 to 6 months as our clinical trials progress and as the manufacturing is put in place.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, Dr. Orman. Thank you both for presenting today. As always, to Monsoon for putting on these presentations. FB Rice, as always, for hosting. Very appreciative. My name is James Fletcher. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you once again for attending. All the best. Bye-bye.